What's up? What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the first iteration of our football live show. This is going to be a show where we talk about all things football that have basically been going on throughout the week. We're going to be doing it on Thursdays. I'm not sure about other days in terms of a schedule, but Thursdays is going to be a guarantee, maybe Tuesdays, so that we can cover what's been going on the weekend. But I wanted to start this because I think I've always wanted to have a football community. I've always wanted to have a community of people where we talk about football, where we can tune into a live stream. We can have some conversations in the chat. We can have some conversations on the live streams. I can take some of your questions. I can take some of your suggestions. I can take some of your hot takes, and then we discuss them. And I think we don't really have a whole lot of that, especially in the Africa continent. As some people may know, people will know me in person. I am Ghanaian, and we have a lot of football content, but I think most of those football content is a little bit restricted when it comes to views. You're talking about maybe a few people on the video, maybe 2, 3, 4 people on the video talking about their own views and their own biases. So there's a little bit of, it's kind of restricted when it comes to a community. But I want to build a community where we can have our conversations. I can pick some random chats in the comment section or in the live chat, and then we talk about it. We discuss about it. We expand it, and I think it's going to make for a very, very interesting conversation. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're still having fun. We're talking about football, stuff that we love to talk about, stuff that I personally do enjoy watching and talking about. Now, without further ado, without too much introductions, I think you guys get the gist. You guys understand what's going on. Let's get into the meat of the content. Today's we have a lot to talk about. For the first iteration of the show, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about the EPL, more specifically the teams that played in the Champions League this past UEFA Champions League round of 16. Chelsea, Newcastle, Liverpool, Man City, and Arsenal. Now, we're going to be switching a little bit. I'm going to try and we're going to try and move into the local a little bit, and we're going to come back to the foreign accents a little bit. It's just me. You know me. You know how we do things. So we're going to enter inside the meat of the things. The EPL needs to have a conversation. I think there is a whole lot going on. I think the league this season, in terms of quality of football, I think we talked about this in my we need to talk about EPL video. You guys should actually check that out. But we talked about this. The EPL needs to fix up in terms of how they are approaching the game, in terms of the rules that they are setting in place, in terms of the things that they are allowing to happen when it comes to their league. I mean, look at the Premier League this season. Long throws is dominating. Set pieces are dominating. There's a whole lot of things that are in the Premier League that you look over the few years. You look at it now and it's like, what's going on? What these people they do? Like, what has changed? And I think the PGMOL, the refereeing standards, some of the rules that have been put in place in the Premier League, they don't really help. They don't really help. They don't go a long way to encourage these teams to play well. Now, when it comes to the quality of players in the Premier League, I think it's there. The quality of, look at the goal Xavi Simons scored yesterday. Banger of a goal. Player quality is there in the Premier League, but we're not talking about player quality. We're talking about the style of football that these teams are being forced to play. Because you look at teams like Tottenham, look at teams like Liverpool, look at teams like Chelsea, even Newcastle. They came to the Champions League, and you look at them in the Champions League, you look at them in the Premier League, and it's night and day in terms of the type of football that they want to play. The Champions League allows you to open up. The Champions League allows you to, play a little bit more expansive, because Sporting is not come to pack the bus. Bayern Munich is not come to pack the bus. Atletico Madrid, although they are known for packing the bus, I think this season they've improved on that. They are not really coming to pack the bus. Real Madrid, Bayer Leverkusen, all these teams, Galatasaray, they are not really coming in to pack the bus. So teams are not, they are not motivated to play that style of football. But I also think it has hindered them a little bit, because they are now used to parking the bus and playing counter-attacking football in the Premier League, that having to switch from that style of play to coming to a league or a competition where you are not necessarily going to get that opportunity to park the bus. I think it has become very difficult for teams to do that, especially, as I said, Newcastle, Tottenham, who again got knocked out, Manchester City. So these three teams, are the Premier League teams that got knocked out, and Chelsea as well. I think they couldn't really keep up when it comes to playing that expansive football that these teams are used to playing. The PSGs, the Madrid, the Barces, the Atleticos, they are used to playing this in their league. So when they come to the Champions League, it's just to translate it, just translate that style of football into the Champions League, and then you are good and you are good to go. But the Premier League, I think we need to have a conversation about that. Next season, I don't know how things are going to go next season. I don't know how the conversation is going to be next season in terms of the style of football that the Premier League teams and the Premier League in general is going to allow to happen. But I think there needs to be a revolution. There needs to be a team that's going to come out and play that expansive football no matter the conditions. And I think Brighton can do that, but to what success? That's the conversation now, because you might be able to do it. You might be able to implement that expansive style of football, but to what end? Teams like Brighton, they do it. Brighton play out from the back, whether they are losing 5-0 or they are losing 10-0 or they are losing 1-0. They are going to play out from the back. They are going to, play their expansive football. But the problem is that Brighton don't have the players. They don't have the quality of players to play it effectively. So no one is looking at Brighton and saying, oh, let's watch what Brighton are doing. Let's learn from Brighton. Because Brighton are doing it and they are not successful. And at the end of the day, teams don't want to be relegated. Teams don't want to be unsuccessful. Teams want to qualify for Champions League because the money in the Champions League is there. The money in European football is there, whether it's Europa League or Conference League. The money is there. Staying in the Premier League safe. Money day. But teams don't want to get relegated. Teams don't want to be in a position where they are not qualifying for Champions League. So if they have to pack the bus, if they have to play counter-attack to get to where they get to, it's not really a conversation. And I think Arsenal as well. I don't want to necessarily blame Arsenal, because I think Arsenal have to do it in the sense that they've tried everything. They've tried the expansive football. They've tried they're trying to play out from the back football, and it has only gotten them second. And now that they are playing the boring, pack the bus, long throwing set piece type of football, they are getting, top of the league. It looks like they are going to win the Premier League at the end of the day. But I think the conversation of the style of football you play doesn't matter as long as you are winning. That's where I have a problem. That is where maybe I can say, win them far. I think if it gets to a point where you have to do it, it's not the only thing but you have to do it. It's kind of like you are stuck in the desert, and you don't necessarily need to drink. Let's say, I mean, this is a very crazy analogy to give, but let's say you piss in a jar. Okay, let's go back. You piss in a jar and you don't have you ain't got no options. Again, bear with me. This is a very bad analogy, but let's stick with it. Okay, you are stuck in the desert. You need hydration. You need to drink something. You piss in a jar. Normally, you don't drink piss. Normally, as a normal human being, they drink piss. But because you are stuck in the desert, you don't get water drink. You for drink something. You for drink something. And at the end of the day, you are desperate. You need to do something. You need to, stay alive. You need to win. You need to get to the next level so that you can drink that water. And I think that's what Arteta is doing. He's in a situation where he needs to win the Premier League. If Arteta doesn't win the Premier League this season, he's getting sacked. So he needs to win the Premier League. He has tried the expansive football. He has tried the playing out from the back. He has tried everything he needs to do. And it is not working. It has gotten him second. We've seen it with our two eyes. It has gotten Arteta second. And he needs to win that Premier League. He needs to be successful in the Premier League. He needs to, get that trophy so that he can build. So if he has to play boring, unattractive football to get there, I think for Arteta it is valid. It becomes an issue when next season he continues playing that type of football. If Arteta goes into next season and he's still playing pack the bus, counter-attack, long throwing, set pieces, relying solely on set pieces to score. Again, no problem with scoring from set pieces. You get no problem with scoring from set pieces. But relying solely on set pieces to score, that's when it becomes an issue. So this season, no main problem, no main issue with Arteta doing what he's doing, because he has to do it. He has to do it to keep his job. He has to do it to continue building the project under Arsenal. So I think that one is issue. It's fine. But I think the Premier League as a whole, they need to start encouraging all these type of interesting football, expansive football. And as I said, it goes all the way back to officiating, because if you're allowing teams to take long throw-ins, if you're allowing teams to spend time taking corners, if you're allowing teams to grapple goalkeepers, especially the way teams they hold goalkeepers, I'm like, what's going on here? Is there something I'm missing out? Is there something I'm not being informed about? The way teams can get corners and then they'll be holding the goalkeeper like the goalkeeper is owing them money. You kind of ask yourself questions. So I think, the Premier League needs to work on that, because other leagues are not doing that. You don't see that in La Liga. You don't see that in Bundesliga. You don't see that in even the League One, as mediocre as that league is. You don't see that. They see expansive football. You see games that are ending 5-2, 3-0, 3-1, 4-1, 4-2, 3-3. 4-3, 4-2, all those type of scorelines, they are interesting for the neutrals, even for the fans involved. It makes it very interesting. When you go to a Premier League game, look at the past weekend in the Premier League, 0-0, 1-1, 1-0, all these boring scorelines. And I think teams, as I said, start of the video, teams have to do it. Teams have to do it, and teams need to, at the end of the day, teams need to be successful. But I think enough of the Premier League. We've talked about the Premier League enough. As I said, I made a video about the Premier League. You guys can check that out. But let's move on to Chelsea. I think that's a conversation I really do want to have, because I have a couple of Chelsea friends who are fans. Chelsea fans who are my friends, and I think the atmosphere in the fan base is one of confusion. I think it's fair to say, because I had a Chelsea fan, we were talking about Chelsea, and they were basically comparing themselves with Spurs, and I was like, hey, isn't that a little bit too far? And they were basically saying the winning mentality in the team is down. The owners are not taking the right decisions, which I agree with. The owners are not taking the right decisions. That one I can agree with. But to compare yourself with Spurs is crazy. I really think so. I think the issue with Chelsea at the moment is the quality of players that they have, and I think quality of players is very underrated. And I feel like people are underrating the quality of players. When you have quality players, look at Madrid versus Man City. When we went into that first leg, I'm a Madrid fan, by the way. That's what I'm saying, we. So when we went into that first leg, there wasn't any hope that Madrid will go through. Not because Madrid don't have good players, but people were thinking about it from the style of play perspective. They were like, Madrid has not played well this season. As compared to Manchester City, Madrid has not played well this season. They haven't been able to get their things together defensively. They look a little bit, but they were forgetting about quality of players. They were forgetting players like Valverde exist. Players like Brahim Diaz are there. Vinicius Jr. is there. Thibaut Courtois is there. Houghton is there. Although he has not been the best, he's still a quality player. So these quality players are the ones that at the end of the day ended up giving us that lead, giving us that win against Manchester City. I don't think if we didn't have quality players, we would have gotten to the position that we got to against Manchester City. Because at the end of the day, that match we didn't play, we didn't have a style of play. We didn't have a way that we wanted to play to beat Man City. We just had quality players, and these quality players showed, with Valverde getting a hat-trick and all that. So I think Chelsea are missing that. They are going for young players that have the potential to become what you need. But the problem is, these young players are not going to be consistent. As I was saying this to one of my friends, the raw definition of young players is raw, unfiltered talent. That's why it's very impressive when you see players like Lamine Yamal, Mark Kubasi, these young players that are able to come into teams and play consistently well, game in, game out. You can wake Lamine Yamal from sleep right now and say, come and play for us at right wing at Barcelona, and you come in and you play well. But the problem that some of these teams that are recruiting young players are forgetting is that young players are not going to play well every single game. It is a rarity when a young player does that. It is not expected of a young player. You can't be expecting a young player, that doesn't have experience, a player that has not been in the game for long, to come in, day out, and put in 7 out of 10. If I say 7 is a bit too much, even 6 out of 10 performances. It's not easy for a young player to come in and say, I'm going to put in 6 out of 10 performances today, tomorrow, next tomorrow, and all that. It's very difficult. And for a team like Chelsea that has built their entire starting 11 around young players, the experienced players are sprinkled about, but majority of the team is young players. Look at the striker, Joao Pedro. The other option, Liam Delap. Two strikers that have not really, they've not gotten there yet. They still have levels to go. You look at the wingers, Garnacho. Maybe Pedro Neto, you can say, has a little bit of experience, but I feel like he's still in that category of inexperience. He's not a young player, but he's still inexperienced. The other options, Bino Gittins, Estevao. Estevao is a great young player. He's going to be one of the best players in the world, I believe, with the talent that he has. But he's not on that level. He's not those type of young players that can come in and perform day in, day out. You look at their centre backs. Sa Mamadou Sa, 19-year-old, 20-year-old centre back. Joel Hato, 20-year-old centre back. A lot of Colwell, Fofana. These players are young, and I think that's where the recruitment has gone wrong. Nothing wrong with buying young players. You can buy young players, sprinkle them about, have them here and there, but you need to be able to build a team that is not solely focused on young players. And I think Chelsea are being treated like like an Ajax. Let's buy young players, let's develop them, and then at the end of the day, maybe we can get profits from them, because Enzo Fernandez is going to go. Caicedo is going to go. Unless Chelsea pull off a miracle next season and win the Premier League, like they can promise these players something and keep them there and pull off a miracle and win the Premier League next season, I think players like Caicedo are going to start looking at it and saying, Charlie, honestly speaking, this Chelsea, if I did what I will win for my career. My mates, they look at Nkapi. Nkapi is about to win the Premier League in his first season. He can potentially win it. He can potentially win a treble. And that's his age mate, that's his country mate. He's looking at people around his age, people like Bellingham, people like Declan Rice is not his age mate. Caicedo, how old is he? But you know what I'm trying to say. But people around his age are winning things, they are achieving things, and he has won a Conference League and a Club World Cup. That's big, but people don't really regard the Conference League. The Club World Cup is, I think, just a glorified preseason tournament. So look at the prizes are there, the Premier Leagues, the Champions Leagues, even the FA Cups. These are the tournaments you want to be winning and adding to your CV. So I think players like Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, these are ambitious players. Caicedo, these are players that would want to win something in their career. And I think if Chelsea can't provide that for them, they will probably be looking at the situation and be thinking, Charlie, maybe I should just pack my things and go. Let me go to a Madrid. Let me go to a Barca. Let me go to a PSG and go and do something there. So I think, that conversation does need to be had about Chelsea, because these young players buying, and I don't know when they started. I think maybe it's their new ownership and their recruitment, and I think their fans need to have a conversation in that. They need to have a say in that, because you can't just be sitting down there and be watching your owners kind of throw your club into disarray. Because you look at Chelsea of the past, these are Champions League winners, these are Premier League winners. Even if they wouldn't win, at least they'll put up a fight. It wasn't 8-2 to PSG. That's a disgrace. Losing 8-2 to PSG is absolutely horrible. So I think they need to have a look at themselves, even their managers. Maresca was a good manager, but what really did Maresca do in his career? Chelsea used to go for the best of the best. Tuchel, who won Champions. Did he win Champions League with Bayern? I don't think he won Champions League with Bayern, but he was a decorated manager before he came to Chelsea. You look at Mourinho, decorated manager before he came to Chelsea. Ancelotti, decorated manager before he came to Chelsea. We've had a lot of managers that have come into the club with pedigree, and these were the managers that you were going for. So I don't know why it switched from that, going for managers with pedigree, to going for managers. Strasbourg, name manager, what's he doing at Chelsea? A club as big as Chelsea, what are they doing with a manager from Strasbourg? I think all these conversations, even Leicester City, a club like Chelsea, what are you doing with a championship manager? You know, you should be going for the best of the best. You should be going for managers that have proven themselves in the Premier League, managers that have proven themselves in the Champions League. I think Chelsea should be going for a Unai Emery. I don't think that's far-fetched to say. Chelsea should be going for someone like a Unai Emery. You know, I mean, who else is in the conversation? You can't go for Arne Slot because he's not really doing well. But you know, there are managers out there. There are managers out there that are doing wonderful things that you know you'd not expect. Even managers that are out of jobs. Managers in the World Cup. You can go for a Nagelsmann. At the end of the day, it's negotiation. I think people will look at this or listen to this and say, oh, you know, Nagelsmann is managing Germany. He's not really going to come to. At the end of the day, it is negotiation. Go to Nagelsmann, submit a project to him, give him a contract, give him something that he cannot say no to. If he says no to and he's devoted to, you know, staying at Germany, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Then you go on to the next. Even Luis Enrique, it might sound far-fetched, but you can't tell me that if you submit a good project to Luis Enrique, he will not want to come and take the Chelsea job. It looks like a difficult job, but PSG was a difficult job when he went for it. Chelsea is a big club. I don't think, you know, it's far-fetched to say that. Chelsea is a big club. They have produced some of the best players in the world. They've done unthinkable things, winning Champions League when no one expected them to win. They've won Premier League. So it's not as if Chelsea is a space. It's not as if Chelsea is a Newcastle that is now coming up in the world of football. They have pedigree. They have a name for themselves. So they need to start going for the best. You can't go into next season with Delap as your striker. You can't go into next season as with Hato and Chaluba and Tosin and Mama Dusa as your defenders. You can't go into next season with Garnacho, Neto, Bruno Gittins, Estevao as your main wingers. These people can be backups. No problem, because these people have talent. At the end of the day, these people, these players, these young players, they have talent. That's why Chelsea are going for them. They have talent, but the problem is they don't have experience. They don't have the know-how. They don't know when to do the things at the right time. That's what Chelsea need. Look at Chelsea teams of the past. Thiago Silva, you know, Reece James, Aspilicueta, you know, even Edouard Mendy. These are experienced players that have been in the game, players that know what to do, when to do. And it feels like Chelsea scouting is becoming a little bit lazy. It feels like they are going into Football Manager or FC26, and then they are just inputting, looking for the youngest players with the highest potential, and they are buying. Before, Chelsea scouting actually used to make sense. Chelsea scouting used to be, oh wow, who is this player? We've never heard of him before. He comes into the league and then he does something special. Didier Drogba, you know, Edouard Mendy. All these players, they are not, you know, fashionable players. They are not players that people know about. But proper scouting, you scout these players and then they come into the team and they are doing something that, oh wow, this is something special. This looks like it's going to be the next best thing. Look at Willian. Willian as well. You know, he wasn't the best player out there, but still, he was able to, you know, cook something up. So I think Chelsea scouting is becoming lazier and lazier because they are going for the obvious players. They are going for the players that everyone is like, oh yeah, this person is going to be the next best thing. And then at the end of the day, there's pressure on them and everything. So I think Chelsea need to fix up. I think Chelsea need to sort themselves out when it comes to scouting, when it comes to player recruitment, when it comes to, you know, and even manager recruitment, because I think Chelsea do want to win. I don't think it's a matter of the winning mentality is not there. I think the idea is there, the ambition is there, the achievement, wanting to achieve things is there, but you don't have the tools to do it. And I give this analogy of you have a hole in your backyard and you want to fill the hole, but instead of buying a shovel, you are buying a rake, you are buying a pickaxe. They might be able to do the job, but how effective are they going to be at doing the job as compared to a shovel? And in Chelsea's case, they need a striker. They have a hole up front for a striker. They have a hole at the back for defenders. Instead of you to go and buy the best of the best with the money that you are buying, you know, people that can potentially do the job. A pickaxe can potentially do the job of filling a hole. How effective is it going to be as compared to buying a shovel? So I think for Chelsea, that's the issue with them. I want to talk about another issue when it comes to football, and I think is something that affects my continent in terms of African football. So we saw recently with again, if you're watching live and you have any comments, you have any topics you want to talk about, any opinions about the things I've said, please make sure to leave your comments, leave your chat in the live chat. I will try my best to attend to them and then respond to them as well. But yes, talking about African football, we saw recently, as I said, Senegal had their AFCON stripped from them and was given to Morocco. And I think that's generated a whole lot of conversations. Mainly, one of the main conversations is why did this happen? And for those who don't know, Senegal had their AFCON stripped from them and was given to Morocco. The reason being that during the match when Brahim Diaz had his penalty, Morocco had their penalty, the Senegal coach ordered the players to leave the pitch because he felt that there had been an unjust decision made against Senegal. So he ordered his players to come off the pitch, and according to CAF, or according to FIFA, according to football rules, when players are off the pitch, for no reason at all, that is, at the end of the day, it leads to a forfeit. Sorry, my eye is itching me. Let me just do that. But yeah, I think that is the conversation going on. So that's why Senegal have been stripped of their AFCON trophy. Now, it's been 2 months since the AFCON final and since the whole debacle with the Senegal-Morocco match. We saw the clips of Morocco ball boys taking the towels of the Senegal goalkeeper, doing a whole lot of things, a whole lot of controversies and topics being talked about. And I think it added to the jeopardy of Senegal eventually winning the AFCON and everything. But I think African football is not being taken seriously, and I mean that's been shown by them having to take 2 months to make a decision that could have been made on the field, because that's the conversation everyone is having. Why wasn't that decision made during the match? Because I don't think the rules were made up on February, of 2026. I think the rules have been existing since. So is it that they forgot about the rules during the match? Did they just not want to implement the rules in the match? And if that's the case, why are you now implementing the rules 2 months after the final? I think that's where people want to have the conversation. And I think it's a right angle to have when it comes to having that conversation, because at the end of the day, yes, the rule says if players leave the pitch during the match for no reason, they forfeit the match. Why didn't that happen during the match? Because they didn't leave the match 2 months later. They left the match during the time the match was going on. So I think, again, African football is not being taken seriously, because if this was a Champions League final, we would have gotten a resolution to the issue as soon as the players leave the field. I think we would have just gotten a resolution to the issue. So I think because African football has not been taken seriously over the past few years, I think they saw it as an opportunity to just this and this happened. And I think if Morocco didn't go and complain about that, we wouldn't have had any issue, and I think it would have just been maybe an online conversation, because I think I did see conversations online about why Senegal were allowed to leave the pitch and come back. Personally, I'll put my hands up in there. I didn't know that that rule existed of if teams walk out of the pitch, they eventually have to forfeit the match. But I did see that conversation, and I was like, okay, maybe people are just having that conversation because it's a weird thing that happens. We've never really seen that happen in football and all that. But again, at the end of the day, the rules are the rules. But my issue is, why have these rules been kind of held on when it comes to being implemented in the African game? And we've seen this a lot. Was it the last 2 AFCONs, or I think the AFCON before this, where a referee blew the whistle for like the final, the 90th minute, when it was like the 86th minute. So I think there have been a whole lot of things going on in African football when it comes to the rules, when it comes to how the game is being played. That's why people like Jamie Carragher can get up and say, "Oh, you know, AFCON, you know, it's not really, you know, it's not there like that." And can you blame him? Can you really blame him? I mean, after this incident with the Senegal, Morocco, AFCON situation, I mean, can you really blame anyone else if they come out and say African football is not up there as compared to something like the Copa America, the Euros? You know, that is the AFCON is our version of the Euros and the Copa America and all those type of competitions. And if you are not taking it seriously like this, how are we expecting other people to take us seriously? I think the CAF disappointment, honestly, it's a disappointment, and it's embarrassing because we look at other competitions, we look at other federations, and you know, this is not how they go about doing their things. As I said, the rule did not just exist after the match, the rule existed before the match. Why was it not implemented during the match? Why did we wait? We gave them medals. You know, it's not as if the match ended and then everybody went to the house. We gave them medals. We gave them awards, individual player awards. You know, best player, best assist, most assists. We even gave Brian Diaz a tournament, a player of the tournament when he was crying. Like, all these things transpired. All these things went on. So do these things not matter? All these things that happened after the match, do these things not matter? All these people that got medals, do they now return the medals? You know, all these conversations need to be had because, as I said, at the end of the day, if this was the World Cup, if this thing happened in the World Cup, let's say maybe Argentina, you know, France or Argentina, Spain make it to the World Cup final, and then something controversial happens on the pitch in favor of Spain or in favor of Argentina, and one team's coach decides that, hey, pack your things, let's go to the dressing room. The rules are going to be applied. You know, and I don't even think the managers will do it because they know that the rules are going to be applied. So another conversation that I think we should have is, did the Senegal coach know of these rules? Because I think as a manager, if I knew that if I take my players off the field, the game is going to be forfeited and it's going to be a loss it's going to be a loss against me, would I want to do that? That's the question. That's another question. Did the Senegal coach know? And if he didn't know, that's also another thing. Why is a coach of a national team not educated enough to know that don't do this? Because I'm sure, again, as I said in the World Cup, as the example I give, Argentina versus Spain, if a controversial decision goes in one of those teams' favor, I don't think the opposing team is going to say, hey, pack your things and let's go. Unless they really don't want to play the match. And again, if they really didn't want to play the match, why did they come back onto the field? So I think there's a whole lot of angles to look at this. But I think the main thing that just, you know, is going to be trumpeted, is going to be highlighted everywhere is African football is not being taken serious. This is not going to happen in Euros. This is not going to happen in World Cup. This is not going to be happening in the Copa America. You know, in any other competition that is being played in the, you know, in world football. And I think we need to fix up. But Africa, I mean, as I'm always in Africa, I know how our leaders, you know, go about when it comes to things like this. You know, leaders in no matter the field, whether it's presidency, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's, you know, marketing, it doesn't matter. The leaders in these positions end up being greedy, end up being incompetent, and then at the end of the day, they will make decisions that don't really favor the, you know, it doesn't favor the normal citizen, because at the end of the day, it's not these people that are going to feel the effect of, you know, outside football fans or outside football pundits talking about Africa in a bad light. It's not these people in charge. It is we, the football fans, it is we that are passionate about the game, that are going to feel the effect of these things happening. So I don't know where we go from here. I think Senegal have also filed a complaint that, you know, that's not how it's supposed to be, and then a whole lot of debacle. I mean, a tournament that has ended 2 months ago, we are focusing on Champions League, you know, knockout stages. We are trying to prepare for the World Cup, Morocco are in the World Cup. All these things. I think Senegal would be in the World Cup as well. All these things, they don't help. They don't help. So I think, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, imagine it comes out that they've had a review of the situation and Senegal have been giving back the World Cup, and it's like, oh, what's going on? We are just tossing the AFCON left, right, left, right. It's not helping. It's not helping. So I think, yeah, that's a conversation about AFCON. I can't really say much because at the end of the day, these African leaders and African people in positions of power that are supposed to be doing things to help us, to help the normal citizen, to assist us when it comes to making things better, to making us benefit from things. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it because at the end of the day, it's not going to benefit them. It's not really going to benefit them. Let's move on to another topic that I think is very interesting. I think we need to start having a conversation about that because we are getting into the latter stages of the season, and we are getting to that point where we start having conversations about Ballon d'Or candidates. Who's going to win the Ballon d'Or, who's the best player in the world at the moment. And I think, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. I think when it comes to the best players in the world at the moment, it's very few and far between, honestly speaking. I look at players like, if I had to go off the top of my head in terms of candidates for the best player in the world, I'd say Mbappe, Lamine Yamal, Michael Olise is up there, definitely, for sure. Michael Olise is definitely up there. I think Valverde has put himself in the conversation. I don't know how far Valverde can, sustain this forum that he's in at the moment, but I think Valverde is definitely up there. Harry Kane is in that conversation. I think I would like to mention an Arsenal player, but I don't know an Arsenal player that has really gone above and beyond to be in that conversation. I think Declan Rice, maybe Declan Rice, maybe Gabriel. That's 7 players at the moment. And I think that's it. I really think that's it. I don't think there's anyone else. Dembele, definitely, yes. Dembele as well. So I think these players, for sure, are going to be in the conversation. If I had to guess who's the best player in the world right now at the moment, it's very difficult. Very, very difficult. I think it would be between Lamine Yamal, Mbappe, and Michael Olise. I think Olise is playing brilliant football at Bayern. I think Harry Kane definitely has to be in that conversation, but I think Harry Kane is not as fashionable as these players. But I think Harry Kane definitely has to be in that conversation. The reason I'm not mentioning Dembele is because he didn't have the best start to the season. He's picking up steam. As the season is going on, he's picking up steam, but I think you need to really, really hit the ground running in terms of, from now to the end of the season and even in the World Cup to really be in that conversation for best player in the world again. But I think right now, Harry Kane, Kylian Mbappe, Lamine Yamal, and Olise, those 4 players I think will be in the conversations for the best player in the world. If I had to pick who would take that, I'll give that to Michael Olise. I think Michael Olise has been very, very underrated this season, and even last season. Last season was his debut season, and I think moving from Crystal Palace to Bayern Munich is a big step. It's a very, very big step. And I think a lot of people are seeing it as not that big of a step because it's Bayern. He's surrounded around good players, but we've seen players go from small teams to big teams, surrounded by good players, and not being able to, put up the numbers that a player like Michael Olise is putting up. And I think he's a very high IQ level type of player. He doesn't do too much on the ball. He's very, 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 very effective when it comes to what he does with the ball and off the ball movement and the decisions that he makes when it comes to, being on the field and playing football. I think he's a very, very smart footballer, and he's got the potential. Definitely, I think Vincent Kompany has compared him to Kevin De Bruyne, and I think he's on that level. I think he's on that level at the moment. He's got that potential to go be a De Bruyne type of player for Bayern Munich that comes in clutch moments. I'm very, very, very much looking forward to watching him against my team Madrid in the quarterfinals. I think that's going to be a very interesting game. I can't predict, and I'm not here to predict But I think in terms of players that are smart, players that are effective with the ball, players that are going to get you results, I think Michael Olise definitely stands out for me. And to be doing it in, you know, in a Bayern team, maybe it's not as fashionable as if he was doing it in maybe a lesser team, but I think it is still impressive nonetheless. It's not easy to go to, a team like Bayern, go up a level when it comes to, improving your standing in the game. It's very difficult to do that, and I think Olise has done that very, very well, and he's been very, very effective with it, and I'm very impressed with him. I think if I had to pick the best in the world at the moment, he's definitely on that list. Lamine Yamal, I think, win a Champions League, win a World Cup, or even go far in the World Cup, and he takes that trophy hands down. Lamine Yamal is probably, if not the best dribbler in the world, 1v1 at the moment. He's a very smart player as well. I think maybe not as effective as Olise. He's got that potential to go that I think, you watch him against Newcastle, and he was smart enough to realize that Lewis Hall is not going to be an easy player to, go up against. And I think in the first leg, he tried to go 1v1 against him, and he learned from his mistake. And I think in the second leg, he improved his game. He was moving more centrally, being part of the playmaking, the link-up play, and it improved his game. And I think that's football IQ. That's being football smart. And again, not a lot of players know how to do that. Players are going to keep banging on the door until the door breaks open or the door breaks down. And I think you need to know, as a footballer, you need to know when to switch up, a style of play. If a style of play isn't working, you need to know when to switch it up and when to, change an approach and find an approach that is going to be effective. And I think that's what Lamine Yamal and players like Olise also know how to do. Harry Kane, as I said, he isn't a fashionable player, but he's getting the numbers. He's being effective for Bayern. He scored a really nice goal against Atalanta yesterday as well. So I think Harry Kane definitely is in that conversation. And if you can do well in the World Cup, if you can do well with Bayern, get far in the Champions League, maybe even win the Champions League and do well in the World Cup, I think Harry Kane has a very good chance of winning the Ballon d'Or and being the best in the world. I've talked about Dembele and how I think he just needs to find the form. He's definitely, obviously, he's a talented player. He is the Ballon d'Or holder at the moment. And I think he will need to really, really hit the ground running if he wants to keep a hold of that Ballon d'Or. Kylian Mbappe is Kylian Mbappe. As a Madrid fan, I get frustrated with Kylian Mbappe a little bit sometimes. But I think Mbappe needs to, he needs to focus on the team more than himself. I think in terms of the numbers, he's going to put the numbers up. I think that's no doubt about that. Mbappe is going to put the numbers up, but I think he needs to try and focus more on the team because there's no doubt he's got the quality. He's definitely got the quality to be one of the best players in the world, as a title officially. That's by winning the Ballon d'Or, but he needs to focus more on the team. He's in a team where it's more teamwork. The team is more effective when they play more as a team as compared to individual performances. And I think Mbappe needs to find a way to hone in on that, focus on that, and make the team work for him. And I think if he can do that, win the Champions League, go far in the World Cup, he's there for the taking when it comes to the Ballon d'Or. We're going to wrap things up with a Liverpool conversation. Not a conversation people might have thought we're going to have, but a Liverpool conversation. It's going to be a short one. It's going to be a quick one. And the question stands, are Liverpool back? Salah got a goal and assist yesterday. He looked like he was getting back to himself a little bit in the end of the game. But are Liverpool back? I don't think so. I think it's just the Champions League football. I think they might do well in the Champions League. I don't know how far they'll go because they have PSG next. But I think Liverpool might do well in the Champions League because the Champions League, as I said earlier, gives teams the opportunity to expand. In the Premier League, it's very difficult to play against a low block, to play against a team that is going to defend and counter. But when you come to the Champions League, teams are more expressive. Teams are more opened up. Teams are more willing to give you a yard of space to do what you want to do. And I think teams like Liverpool, who still have quality players, don't keep in mind, they still got some quality players in their team. When you come up against a team that's going to give you that space, that's going to open up for you, I think Liverpool do find a little bit of joy there. Are they back? I don't think so. I think they're gonna do enough to get Champions League football. I think so. I think that might be the case. They might do enough to get Champions League football, but I think apart from that, it's not really gonna be, a renaissance for Liverpool. I think they'll struggle against Brighton, who is their next match in the Premier League. I think Salah is not back. I mean, it would be a surprise. It would be a miracle at the moment for Salah to get back to even a percentage of his last year's form. But I think it's a positive result for Liverpool. They needed that. Their fans definitely needed that. Dropping points against Spurs definitely put a bitter taste in the mouth of Liverpool fans and probably the Liverpool players as well. So I think that result against Galatasaray was very needed, and I think a couple of players need to step up. Salah is in that conversation definitely, but I think a Florian Wirtz, a Jeremy Frimpong, they definitely need to step up. I mean, Alexander Isak, where's he been? What's happened? Is he injured? Look at players like Milos Kerkez. They all need to step up. So I think Konate as well need to have a better season. And I think that's what is going to help Liverpool. That's what is going to make them, better when it comes to the Premier League, and hopefully maybe get the opportunity to go far in the Champions League as well. But yeah, I think that covers everything. That covers everything that I wanted to talk about. I think I just wanted to make a little bit of a not shorter, but just the first iteration of the football talk show. That, again, as I said, if you are tuning in to any of these talk shows, if you do tune into these talk shows, Thursday 10 o'clock a.m. We're going to be doing this every Thursday 10 o'clock a.m. I might add another show on Tuesday. I'm not sure about that, but I might add another show on Tuesday so that we can have a talk about the weekend matches and the weekend fixtures and whatever goes on in the world of football on the weekend. We might do that. But if you guys tune in, make sure to comment. Again, this is for you guys. These conversations we're having is for you guys. So I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your hot takes, suggestions, anything football related, life related. Just talk. Let's have some conversations in the chat. Let's try and build a community where we can have a conversation about football. Because as I said, the space I find myself in, the continent and country where I find myself in, we don't really have that. There's not a lot of community football talks where people sit down and have a conversation with people watching. It's always conversation with other people, on a panel. And I think it kind of makes the conversation a little bit biased because everyone has a team that they're supporting, and you're not really hearing a more generalized opinion from everyone. And I think I'm trying to build that. I'm trying to build a community where we can have a conversation with people chatting in the live chat and in the comment section as well. Because as usual, any feedback from you guys would be greatly appreciated, especially when it comes to this football talk show. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay safe.